Hey, wheelchair gunfighter here. This video is going to be about Tomahawks. Tomahawks were one of the first weapons that I learned growing up in the martial arts and self-defense and military communities. I started the first weapons I learned were a sword and a tomahawk, and so I really have a lot of love for them. In my opinion, they're the most adaptable and one of the most effective handheld weapons that you can carry on your person. And unlike a sword, you can strap it to your military gear. You can have it as a tool that can double as a self-defense weapon. So it's still applicable to it's still applicable within our social settings today, rather unlike something like walking around with a sword. But the tomahawk is extremely adaptable. There's a lot you can do with it. It's a very powerful weapon if you utilize it correctly. There's some things about it that make it particularly useful for a wheelchair, but mostly it's just an effective tool anyway. A lot of people think that you grab this thing, and this is just a modified cold steel trainer that we use to smack each other around with a little bit, but to chop the spike off the end, just because that's what we prefer and how we use them. But most people think you just grab the haft and you start swinging it like an axe and you're just chopping with it. And there's so much more that you can do with it, right? You can choke down on them, you can punch, right? Even just keeping the normal grip. You can jab, you have your chopping obviously, but there's a lot of hooking, which makes this particularly useful from the wheelchair, so you can hook and do certain things. The back, we prefer, here at White Rabbit, we prefer things with hammers or that are flat on the back. We really don't like the spikes, and the purpose being is for multiple opponents. You don't want to use the edge where you're potentially getting it stuck, and that spike is definitely going to get stuck. So you're talking about specific blows, killing blows going from one opponent to another. This being a hypothetical situation, I don't want that spike to get stuck and then I have to constantly fight it to go to the next person. If you utilize it correctly, using the hammer on the rear or the flat of the back of the head of the tomahawk, you can use circular motions or even flip the hawk around and use it like more of a clubbing motions, where you're still using the hooking motions with your back cut, but you can hammer very effectively, very powerfully from one person to the next and do disabling mechanical blows, but going one person to the next, which also makes this particularly useful from the wheelchair if you ever find yourself in that circumstance, because multiple opponents is the apex of problems that you can face from the wheelchair dynamic. Multiple opponents is that's the biggest threat that wheelchair folks face. It's just a very hard thing to deal with, because you can't channelize them, you can't move around and line them up, right? It's literally about speed. It's about speed and efficiency and trying to stay in your wheelchair. Maybe some psychological stuff. But you really have to get creative with it, and it's a dynamic that changes from person to person. But if you can get a tool, if you can introduce a tool into that mix, you can change, it'll give you a huge advantage towards achieving that goal. So we like the hammers, we like the flat, right? Just that it doesn't get stuck. You can go from movement to movement. You can do stuff where you're choking down, you're punching. You can, if you think about it as far as using the haft in a reverse grip, you can think of it as another joint that you can articulate for these clubbing strikes from a reverse grip. They're very useful. You can do stuff where you're trapping. Also useful from the wheelchair, hooking and trapping, anything in that genre of techniques. But being able to extend out, in a compressed manner, or maybe in a more hidden manner where you can't see it, right? This can be a very powerful. The most powerful attacks are the ones that the opponent never sees coming. But you can go for an upside down grip, and you think more of a less lethal clubbing motion or baton motion with the haft, where you can still punch. Right, you still have your hammer blows with the end, and where the Tomahawk really sets itself apart in the more advanced arena is that this is one of the only tools that you can throw effectively. A knife, you really have to know your spins and your distance. You have to judge your spin accurately, and you have to be very consistent with your throw, with your technique. But with a Tomahawk, you can shift. You can change up where your release point is. You can overextend a little bit, but the weight of the Tomahawk does the work for you when it comes to landing the blow. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do. You can flip the hawk around back towards you for a little bit different distancing, right? Throwing this way so that you get an upside down stick. But this is actually combat effective throwing it if you need to, particularly for short ranges or within one rotation, give or take as you adjust. But there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this, and not to mention it has a lot of utility functions. I keep one on the back of my chair most of the time, and it's not for a self-defense capacity. It's not even the best Tomahawk for that capacity. I've had the opportunity to, just since I've been in a wheelchair, being a responder to more than one serious car accident. I just happened to be there, and I have some medical training, so I'm not just going to not get involved. But I happen to have some rudimentary tools with me at the time to get into that vehicle and get the person out. But the Tomahawk that I carry, here I'll show you. The Tomahawk I carry is an RMJ Tactical loggerhead. So this is what I carry with me daily. And it has the hammer, it doesn't have the spike. So I can, if I had to use this as a weapon, I'm utilizing the techniques that I'm used to utilizing. But it's a smaller hawk, it's relatively heavy, it's a solid steel. But I carry this in case I have to get through a door, I have to get into a car door. If you can go on YouTube and find videos of the demos for these things. This'll open a car, any car, like a sardine can, very, very quickly. And that's really what drew me to it. Right, but I have the ability to get in there where, brute strength that I can't generate from the wheelchair cannot be applied. But so RMJ. But there's a lot of things. So, but a more realistic application. Being in a wheelchair and you've got to escape a building. Having a tool on you, if you have a good physical capability and it's giving you more options. If I've got to get out in the middle of a fire, if there's an active shooter situation, and we come up, if we're trying to escape a commercial building and we come to a locked door, I'm going to break that door down, or I'm going to break in through that lock, break down that door through the locking mechanism and get out. It's a potential way for me to escape where normally I'd have to go through the danger zone, I'd have to go through smoke and fire, or go through the line of attack for an active shooter or what have you. Me personally, I'm going at that active shooter, but if I've got to get my family out, that's something different entirely. But stuff like this is what can help you get there. But knowing how to use it, know how to use everything as a defensive tool, as a potential weapon, improvised weapon. But Tomahawk's very, very effective. So let me show you some of the stuff that's particularly useful from the wheelchair. And this is just hooking, and we're not going to get really into it, but this is kind of what you're looking at. If you have the capability to use it, so we'll just do the same technique. He's going to come up and do an overhand slash, right? I can do stuff like here, and I can hook him and bring him to me and off balance him, and then I have this, right? And I'm locking him up with a hawk. Same exact thing, right? And I'm hooking to the neck, right here. One more, so I come here, right, hooking to the leg. It's just the nature of the hook is very, very effective. If you saw on the RMJ Hawks, the beard is rather sharp, so it enhances this capability right here. But some of that stuff in the wheelchair, anywhere where you're hooking or trapping, right, tying up with the wheelchair, it's going to give you extra leverage toward those techniques. But just some of my opinions on Tomahawk. Extremely effective tool anyway, but it's something that it does enhance some of the stuff that we do anyway from the wheelchair. The hooking, trapping, bringing in close, The other thing is that these are very, very powerful. You know, one shot to the head or spine, or really any bone, a solid shot to a bone, is going to destroy the bone. So this is your mechanical incapacitation. You can psychologically stop somebody by like attacking their eyes. They don't get, they can't see. They're not getting intelligence, so their brain freezes to try to figure out what's going on. Psychological incapacitation. Systemic incapacitation would be central nervous system, air, blood, right? It's the system, it's the root system that's keeping all this going. Mechanically being your skeletal structure, and what drives that skeletal structure would be your muscles and tendons. But if you can, the mechanical bit is what's going to be instantaneous. It's going to work every single time if it's in a destructive manner, and it's going to be instant. Even the central nervous system isn't instant all the time, or it's not it's not as reliable. I mean, handgun bullets have known to glance off the skull, right? But if you disable a body part, it can't hurt you. And this is where this comes in. There's not a whole lot on the human, there's nothing on the human body that can really stand up to a solid shot from this. So, anywhere where you're attacking a bone is going to be very quick. So, if you're talking about multiple opponents, you can go from one person to the next and effectively deal with several people at once, and hopefully have the kind of give off this psychological presence that maybe you should stay away from that guy in the wheelchair. Right, but you're starting to get into these very nasty tactics. Really, the only answer to multiple opponents in the wheelchair, and stuff like this, having a very powerful weapon, is really what's going to make that happen. But anyway, Tomahawk, carry one, learn how to use it. If you guys want extra videos on Tomahawk and techniques and stuff like that, we can get to those. It's not high on my priority list, but if people are requesting it, I'll make some more. So. Thanks for watching. wheelchairgunfighter@gmail.com.
Go right here. Oh yeah, right,